I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Glanbia Nutritionals has partnered with the Food Institute to bring you today's webinar titled Embarking on a Wellness Journey, where we will dive into trends, insights, and solutions for food and beverages. I'm Brooke Rosenthal, Customer Marketing Manager at Glanbia Nutritionals. At GN, each quarter we take a focused approach that drives our activity, content, and tools, and right now it's all about holistic wellness. This is a relevant topic in today's market, especially when it comes to nutrition. The Food Institute will be covering some macro trends in this space and walking us through the evolution of health and wellness, past, present, and future. Glanbia Nutritionals will cover our view of holistic wellness and touch on some key trend areas like immunity plus and healthy aging. After that, we will have a brief product overview and leave some time for Q&A, so feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box at the end. We're excited to kick this off, so with that, I'll turn it over to Brian from the Food Institute.
Great. Well, thanks, Brooke. Thank you to the Glanbia Nutritionals team, and also thank you to James as well, who is my co-presenter on this. A little bit about me. I am the managing partner and CEO of the Food Institute. My background is quite a varied one. I started, in investment banking, working for Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, covering the consumer food and beverage group. Spent time as a consultant, helped building the transaction advisory group at Ernst & Young here in New York. I also worked as a private equity executive, being responsible for mergers and acquisitions and acquiring controlling positions in the lower middle market food and beverage companies in the U.S. I also sit on the board of the Rutgers Food Innovation Center. I serve as an advisor to multiple food and beverage companies and appear regularly on various media programs in the U.S. And a little bit about the Food Institute. Long story short, it is the Bloomberg of the food and beverage industry from a news, data, and trends perspective. It specifically focuses on B2B content. The content is insights driven, not politically driven or ideologically driven, but really focused on what is happening in the food and beverage industry from a statistics and analytical perspective. Welcome all members to check out our website, foodinstitute.com, and if there's interest in becoming a member, please sign up. So there are going to be a number of polls today. For the first poll, I want to give an opportunity for all the audience members to answer this poll. What is the average life expectancy for the U.S.? We have 4 different options, so I'll leave about 30 seconds for the audience members to choose A, B, C, or D, 72, 77, 80, and 83. So please, if you haven't hit your answer, please do so in the next 20 seconds, and I will show the results in a little bit. But as people are submitting their answers, health is a key issue for the United States as a whole. And you would think that the US being the #1 nation, both from like a GDP perspective, just from a growth perspective over the past 50 years, you would expect there would be a high correlation with life expectancy. And so I'm sure as I go to the next slide in the next 10 seconds, you'll find out the answer. And with that, I'll leave 5 more seconds. We have 52% of the attendees that have answered. So the answer is correct. 54% of the attendees chose the right answer, 77. So it's a quite very good. We have a very well-informed audience today. So nice job on that. So just taking a look at the past 40 years. So the darkened line is the life expectancy for the U.S. The current average across the OECD nations is about a little over 80. The U.S. is below average at 77, as the poll answer indicated. And what you'll notice is that, the U.S. has really fallen behind, not just recently, but even going back into the 1980s, being in the lower part of that cluster of countries. You'll notice that as the years progress, the U.S. has really kind of fallen behind life expectancy, and this is quite shocking. And it's something that we've all heard about, we've read about it, but to see it in this graphical form really highlights the major issue that the U.S. has as it relates to their physical and also, as we'll touch upon in later slides, mental wellness. Interestingly, there's the one at the bottom that started around around here. This is actually Korea. So I'm Korean by background, and it's just interesting to see just the dynamic between these two countries over the past 40 years. Another way to look at health and wellness in the U.S. Is avoidable deaths. And so, similar to the previous slide, what we're seeing is that the U.S. Continues to experience higher avoidable deaths versus the other OECD nations, right? The OECD average is 225 per 100,000 population. The U.S. Stands at 336. And what you've also can notice here is that it's actually increased, over the past 5 years since 2015. Some other metrics that I wanted to highlight here, and this is not exhaustive, so I just want to give a lay of the land. And clearly, when you look at obesity, chronic illness, pandemic deaths, and even intentional self-harm, you'll notice that the U.S. either is the lead in these metrics or near the top. So one thing I'll want to touch upon here is obesity. This is indicated by a body mass index of 30 or more, right? When you look at what is considered the normal range, it's about 18.5 to about 24. What's considered overweight is about 25 to 29, and obese, which is the higher category, is 30 and above. And U.S. currently stands at 40, on average 42.8, which is quite staggering. Chronic illness is defined as having multiple different types of conditions, at the same time, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, and then pandemic deaths is pretty much self-explanatory. But even with pandemic deaths, you can sort of make the correlation that because of the health condition of U.S. and Americans, the deaths are at the higher end of the range when you compare it to other OECD nations. I just added the intentional self-harm to show that mental illness is becoming more and more of an issue. And in this particular case, it's about suicide, right? So, long story short, when we take a look at these graphs, U.S. is in a pretty bad shape when it comes to the statistics related around health and wellness. I also wanted to highlight how Americans self-report their conditions. So this is a recent survey that was done by Data Essential, and what's really interesting is that anxiety and depression tops the list of conditions that Americans self-report or have reported over the past 5 years. The others, overweight, hypertension, high cholesterol. So these are nothing new, but you could see that the self-reported conditions highly correlate with some of the earlier graphs of whether it's obesity, whether it's chronic illnesses. Americans do suffer. This is a key issue and condition of many Americans now. What's also interesting is that in a recent survey, this is done back in the end of 2022. The question was asked, when thinking about your health in 2023, which of the following options, if any, are most important to you? And when you look at what Americans listed, quite surprisingly, drinking water was the top. I would not have expected that to be the top. But you'll also see that exercise, reducing stress, so getting more sleep, more of the emotional, that mental wellness is near the top of the list. Obviously losing weight, that remains consistent from year to year. But you'll also find that that consumers are looking to eat more protein, and that's something that James will be talking about later in his presentation. The desire for functional products, getting more vitamins. So these are all opportunities, and I think especially for those that are food and beverage manufacturers here, one conclusion that I take away from this is that health and wellness is not only here to stay, but it's also increasing in need for consumers, both physically, but also their desire and wanting to change their day-to-day behavior. So it's a huge opportunity, and I'm excited for this webinar for that reason. I wanted to touch on at a high level how the framework of health and wellness has changed over the years. As we all know, in the past, I remember growing up looking at the USDA sort of the pyramid, and the focus was really primarily on two things: diet and exercise. That was what I grew up with, and I came from Canada, and I spent about half of my time here in the US. That was consistently the messaging from media and even from physicians. And what has happened, and it's sort of been a slow evolution, is we sort of gravitated to this new model of what I would characterize as, it's not just diet and exercise anymore. It's really emotional well-being, mental wellness, social wellness, and that also includes consumers wanting to do well, to the environment and about sustainability. The real trigger, the real reset really happened in 2020. When the pandemic hit, it kind of, a lot of Americans started thinking about their own well-being in new ways. And what we'll find is that in the following pages, that whole new model, is the new way that Americans and even food and beverage businesses are looking at health and wellness today. There's a great study by Hartman Group. I'll mention it very quickly. So what they found in their latest study, which was published earlier this year, is that 93% of those surveyed categorized mental and emotional well-being as being a key factor of health and wellness. 91%, not surprisingly, physical. But what's also up and coming is a social sustainable factor of health and wellness. 52% reported that as being a key factor when they view health and wellness. As I mentioned before, 2020 was a great reset. So you can see in this chart the question that was asked to consumers: which three of the top topics do you find the most worrying in your country? So from 2015 to 2020, it was very consistent, right? So whether it's inflation, poverty, crime, unemployment, financial, coronavirus, well, not coronavirus, but those four factors were pretty consistent across the board. Then the pandemic hits, and you could see that the lines really change, right? So where pandemic really became front and center in early 2020, now it's less of a concern. You can see that red line. But what's also really telling is that the emotional aspect of inflation is top of mind now. That is a number one concern for consumers today. And I think that's important to highlight for many food and beverage manufacturers. It's not just about the physical, and that's the old model. This is how consumers are living day to day, and mental and emotional well-being is a key aspect. The most recent data in June 2023, again, further emphasizes the fact that inflation is the number one concern for consumers. What's also newer, I would say, is that the social aspects of inequality, crime, financial factors, unemployment, and also physical, the healthcare are big factors. These are top of mind for consumers today. Earlier this year, Mondelez and Food Institute published a report on a state of snacking. There's a secondary report on how the world snacks. And this further emphasizes how consumers are changing their view on F&B, food and beverage. And so just to kind of highlight the key takeaways from that study, going from left to right, inflation, 89% of consumers are concerned about inflation. And not only that, they're concerned that the availability of the food and beverages that they want, that's a concern for 60% of that sample group. What's also what it also highlighted is that 75% of consumers are realizing that because of inflation and maybe potential for recession, they're worried about whether they have enough to purchase the food and beverage that they want. Going into the middle two columns, they're also thinking about snacks differently as well. And so 84% of consumers feel that snacks should meet a number of different needs, and in particular, nutritional needs. So this is a sign of the times. It's not, just a nice to have. This is a demand from consumers. Health and wellness is top of mind, and not just the physical, but also the mental aspect and the emotional aspect of food. And this is a growing field of study now, but more and more consumers are making the connection that food and beverage not only can reduce their physical illnesses, but also their mental wellness as well. And so they're being much more mindful of what they put in their bodies. 68% of consumers, based on the survey, are checking nutrition labels before purchasing product. And lastly, I'll just touch upon very quickly on the sustainability front. Consumers a key concern is sustainability, right? 69% believe that sustainable packaging helps them enjoy snacks more. So this is an aspect that I don't think is going to, go away. I think it's probably going to intensify based on some of the major forces that are impacting the food and beverage industry today. We also discovered through our studies that we compared 27 countries and how consumers are snacking from 2013 to 2021. And we noticed a couple of things, and this is not surprising to the folks that are listening today and watching today's webinar. The amount of people around the world that are snacking has gone up from 78% to 86%. That's a huge growth over an 8-year period. And not only that, the number of snacks per capita, per consumer, has also increased on average from 3.1 to 3.3, representing a 77% increase. So what's driving that? A lot of it was pandemic driven. So you'll see in the middle column there that the major growth driver in snacking has really occurred in that morning, that breakfast and afternoon day part. 42% increase in growth of snacking in that morning day part, 22% increase in that middle. What we also found was that consumers are not only snacking more, but they're eating meals less. So, in the study, the percentage of people that they said that they skipped meals went up from 30% to 40%, which is a huge number. And lastly, what I'll point out is that the average number of snacks consumed by generational cohort, the cohort that represents the highest number of snacking really is that Gen Z and millennial category. And that's not surprising. But my main takeaway for many of the folks here is that the snacking culture will continue. And that's something, it's an opportunity for F&B companies to really see that as a growth area for your businesses. Another aspect that's related to what I was just saying is that, in the past, the motivations of snacking were primarily sustain, maybe energy, maybe it was a little bit of indulgence at the end of the day. Now consumers are thinking about snacks in more ways. So whether it's for nourishment, whether it's for energy, whether it's for a reset and a pick-me-up, whether it's for social reasons, and towards the end of the day, whether it's as an everyday treat or mindful indulgence, consumers are snacking not at specific points in the day, but they're snacking throughout the day, right? So again, we see that huge growth in that morning and afternoon day part. This hybrid lifestyle of work, workers working from home, maybe it's partly in the office. that has dramatically changed the way consumers eat. And again, I think this is an opportunity for many of the food and beverage companies to really address those day parts, but in particular, look at health and wellness as a way to drive transaction, to drive velocity in your products. And James is going to be talking about that in the upcoming slides. I want to highlight one thing here, just on the emotional side of snacking. You not only are Gen Zers and that younger generation snacking more, but they're also experiencing a higher level of anxiety compared to the general population. 86% of Gen Zers that were part of the survey, said that they snack to relieve anxiety. And not only that, there's that emotional, social, boredom was actually considered one of the major reasons why they snack, compared to from 79% versus 69% of the general population. So this is a newer sort of phenomenon that's happening in the food and beverage world on how consumers are snacking. But again, I think this is also another great opportunity for companies to really think about and be targeted to addressing certain need states. And that's why I'm so excited to partner with Glanbia, because they really provide that ways to address those need states across different classes of consumer. So what is the future of health and wellness? A lot can be found out based on what consumers have reported, what they want to see in their food. So you look at, for example, functional benefits. So going back to certain products that help the body, right? Consumers are saying that they want to eat food, they want to eat snacks that address certain functional needs that they want. So you'll see a 7% increase versus 2 years ago on functional benefits. You also find that they want energy, right? So 66% snack to fuel the day. And this is something that James is also going to be addressing in his upcoming slides of how Glanbia uses protein and other items to help F&B companies really target that satiety. They want bold flavors, they want convenience, and they want snacking that, or products that fit their lifestyle, this hybrid lifestyle. Four of the claims, the nutritional claims that are experiencing high growth: energy, not surprisingly, probiotics, immunity, vegan. This continues to be a high growth area across food and beverage, across snacks in the F&B industry. And this is, again, great growth opportunities for F&B companies to really target certain need states for consumers. But this is not to say that health and wellness is the sole focus here, right? Taste and flavor are king. That's no surprise. But what it does mean is that consumers are demanding something else in addition to taste and flavor. They want something where they don't need to buy 2 or 3 different products to address 2 or 3 different need states. They'd rather choose one that satisfy multiple health and wellness conditions, right? So whether it's vitamins and minerals, right? That's a 5% increase just versus 2 years ago. Whether it's a need for antioxidants, micronutrients, whether it's protein, right? That's a key area that consumers want today, and probiotics as well, which is somewhat been a theme that we've seen not just this year, but for over the past 5 years. I just want to highlight a few items what items are trending in the market today. So this is a study by Circana. So they have a new product pace setters report, as well as the rising stars. And one of my key takeaways from this is that consumers want energy. So they want health and wellness alternative beverages like Alani Nu, right? And they want low sugar. They want plant-based. You see this tattooed chef being the number 7 item here. You're seeing consumers wanting products that are a little bit better for you. So instead of being really bad like just purely alcohol, you'll see low-cal seltzers like Topo Chico. One of the ones I want to highlight here is Kevin's Natural. So they recently got acquired by Mars. So the need for protein, the need for better for you, we're seeing this becoming more and more of a growth factor. And there's reasons why Mars paid $800 million to buy that specific brand. And the last thing I'll highlight is Olipop, right? Soda is a major cause of diabetes for Americans. Olipop represents a specific product of category where it, low sugar, but also adding functional benefits to that soda category. In my view, it's a truly disruptive product that will continue to gain steam over the next 2 to 5 years. So really exciting to see new products come to market here. And last thing I want to just very much highlight, Kraft is one of the leading CPG companies in the world. They've shifted their entire strategy of looking at their product portfolio just on basic categories like mustard, like relish, like gravy, for example. What they've done over the past couple of years is really identify and target specific meal occasions and specific consumer need states. So if you look on the right-hand side, health is a key consumer need state that they're addressing. They're addressing fresh. They're addressing convenience, fun, social aspects. The family aspect, and we're not. This is not just specific to Kraft Heinz. This is also specific to many other large multinational CPG companies. So. It's a huge opportunity. The train has already left the station. Health and wellness is not only, here to stay, but it's accelerating. And the consumer, because the consumer is changing, it opens up opportunities for F&B companies to really address those specific need states. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Glanbia. So James, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for going through that information. And good day to everybody who's joined our webinar. I'm going to step in and talk a little bit about what's next with respect to some key areas around holistic wellness. And so what we want to talk about today is some trends, insights, and nutritional focus areas. I think it's first important to start off and talk a little bit about who we are. So I am the Vice President of Global Marketing and Insights for Glanbia Nutritionals. And I'm privileged to be joined by Brooke Rosenthal, who's my colleague in customer marketing. And our company is part of Glanbia PLC, which is a global nutrition group. What makes us unique is we've got a deep expertise and a wide range of capabilities as it comes to nutritional solutions. So from different protein solutions and premixes, different bioactives, films and flavors. And then when you think about the categories that we can go into, we can support supplements and vitamins and protein powders and ready-to-drink formats, baking, confections, healthy snacks, and functional beverages. So we've got a wide range of capabilities. And to give you a little bit of a sense about our global scale, we are the #1 producer of whey protein in the United States. We're the #1 producer of American-style cheddar cheese and the #2 global supplier of micronutrient premix. So we really take a global approach to understanding some of these trends. We are also very insights focused, and we're really trying to bring that type of support to any of our customers to help them on their journey. Speaking of journey, let's talk a little bit about the holistic wellness journey. And the first thing I'll say is on the left-hand side, holistic wellness is not some ethereal concept. What it really describes is a combination or an integration of physical, mental, and emotional focus that people are digesting right now. So all those factors to come into play, and we'll talk a little bit about that over the next few slides. So what I'm going to talk about today are first of all, defining what wellness really means. We'll get into some consumer interest areas. We'll then talk about the wellness to aging link. Well, we'll obviously spend some time on the role of nutrition and some of the areas that are of most interest right now. And then we'll wrap it up with a few key takeaways. I think the first thing to start off with is to really define what we mean by wellness. in our industry, we tend to use the terms health and wellness almost interchangeably, as if they're kind of the same thing, and they really are different. And I think the best way to talk about them is just in a simple fashion. Health is really the goal, where wellness is really the journey. When you think about health, you're thinking about a well-functioning and physical mental state. You're thinking about something where you're constantly measuring and being exemplified in that state that you're seeking. And so think about somebody who has an Apple Watch and they're tracking their steps and they're tracking their calories burned and those sorts of things. That's that focus on health. If you're looking at your blood pressure or your A1C or your body mass index or your cholesterol levels, those are all elements around measuring the metrics of whether or not you've achieved a state of health. Wellness is very much about a journey. It's more of a holistic view that takes a look at the mental, the physical, and the emotional side of how do I live a fulfilling life and how do I achieve this general sense of well-being. And what's interesting about those that are on a wellness journey is they're making trade-offs every day, every hour of every day. They're choosing different elements. How am I spending enough time with my family? What kind of things am I eating? Am I spending enough time to get myself in a comfortable mental state? Am I taking a break? Am I balancing my work life? All those things come into play. So it's very, very important. And in fact, from a recent McKinsey survey, almost 80% of respondents believe that wellness is important, but over 40% of respondents believe that wellness is a top priority. So it is something that is critical to our end consumers. Now, I think we're going to stop for a minute and do a poll. So the question is, which generation is taking the greatest amount of action around that mental and emotional well-being? We'll give you a minute here to put your answers in, and then we'll take a look at the results. All right, let's go ahead and got a few more. We'll get a few more coming in. There we go. Okay, we got a good portion of respondents, so let's go ahead and take a look at the results. All right, so audience believes that about 61% of you think that it's 26 to 35, and then kind of a mix in between almost a tie between 18 to 25 and 36 to 45. So let's take a look at what's the actual data here. So if you take a look at wellness encompassing mental and physical well-being, and you compare the dark blue, which is the mental and emotional well-being, versus the green, which is physical well-being, you can see that every generation is placing almost an equal weight, and in fact, slightly higher weight on the overall mental and emotional well-being. And I think this is really interesting. It touches on what Brian was describing earlier, which is we are seeing a bit of a shift from being that wellness is all about the physical side to wellness definitely incorporating physical, but really encompassing more and starting to see a heavier weight on that emotional and mental side. And here's another way to think about this. If you think about the top 5 ways that consumers are pursuing wellness, number 1 is stress reduction. Number 2 is getting more sleep, which we'll talk about in a minute, especially among Gen Z. Number 3 is our changes in nutrition. 4 is managing that work-life balance. And then you get to 5, which is the physical and exercise. So again, physical exercise, very important, but you can see how we're seeing more and more of an emphasis on the mental and emotional side of well-being. Now, when we think about this side of holistic wellness, we have to talk about part of that, which is healthy aging. And this is where we get into understanding how people are looking at overall healthy aging. If you look at this graph, and from the left to right, you basically have the generations, the same breakout of generations that you saw in the quiz. So Think about it kind of Gen Z, and you've got a couple groups of Gen Y, you have Gen X and boomers on the right-hand side. If you start on the left-hand side, you get into some of the physicality and some of the cognitive side of things. Not surprisingly, the boomers are placing more of an emphasis on those two areas. So they're thinking more about that. It's more conscious to them, and it's more important to them versus some of the other generations. As you move into the next two groups and you start looking at these more well-being approaches and more of this positive energy mindset, look at how even the split is across all generations. And I think it's important to highlight when we talk about positive mindset, what that really means is, are they able to balance the needs and emotions and anxieties and stress of their life? If they have that under control, then they're in a better place and a better likelihood for them to find a positive energy mindset. So in this case, in that particular description, it's not about a boost of energy. It's more about an overall positive mindset and managing what life's throwing at them. So I think when you think about holistic wellness and you think about healthy aging, it's important to look at it from the context of a trinity. And it's about physical, mental, and this idea of energy well-being. So energy well-being has two facets. One is, yes, there's an energy to take on the day, fuel my day, and certainly even getting a little bit of a boost if you're consuming an energy drink. But there's another part of it that's really important, and that is this energy well-being. It's that idea of energy balance. And if I'm managing the stress and I'm managing what life's throwing at me, I feel like I have an overall better sense of well-being. Now, you might say, for example, well, healthy aging, that's probably only focused more among, let's say, boomers. And if you look on the left-hand side of the page, we actually can look at this by generation. And across all generations, the idea of healthy aging, how important is it to them, actually reaches a top two box of important, which is either extremely or very important, of 75% or more. Those of you who are doing concept product tests in your current or previous lives know that if you get a 75% top two box in something, you've got some pretty good commitment. That's a pretty solid score. And we see the same type of thing here. But what really gets interesting is you move to the right-hand side of the page. And this is looking at when are generations thinking about and starting to take action around managing healthy aging. Go all the way to the right-hand side and look at the boomers, 55 plus. They actually started thinking about healthy aging more in their 40s. Then you move to the Gen Xers, and they started to get a little bit earlier, so 40s and then a little bit into the 30s. Millennials, Gen Y, very, very large segment of the population, started to see movement into the 30s and then creeping into the 20s. And then look at the first group, which are the Gen Zers. Over half of them are actually thinking and taking action to think about healthy aging in their 20s. So what we're seeing is every generation is thinking more about healthy aging, and not just thinking, but looking for solutions and looking to take behaviors about how do they manage that healthy aging process. And one of the best ways to do that is, of course, nutrition. So let's talk a little bit about the role of nutrition and how people are thinking about this. What we're looking at here is a graph that's at the top end starts to look at globally, and then we can break this down by 4 regions. And these 4 colors are distinguished as follows. The dark blue really represents those that are looking to eliminate the bad stuff, the stuff that's bad for me. So that would be reducing sugar, reducing unhealthy fats, reducing sodium intake, etc. The light blue are those that are actually looking to incorporate more natural foods in their natural state. So fruits and vegetables and nuts, for example. Yellow gets into those that are really seeking to manage and reduce the amount of processing or processed ingredients. So think about additives, processing ingredients, stuff that they don't really know and understand. Think about this group a little bit more leaning towards the clean label side of ingredients. And then finally, on the green side, these are people that are actually looking to consume products that are purposeful and helping with them in their journey to deal with a certain area. They may be looking to build muscle, so they're looking for protein. They may be looking to manage inflammation, so they're looking for antioxidants or certain botanicals that might help them in that, and so on. What we can see is at the top row across the world, these areas are split generally pretty consistently, about 25%. However, if you go down on the page and you look under around the red box, you can see North America. And look at how significantly more important reducing the bad stuff is for the North American population. And this is pretty consistent. In the US especially, our consumers are really thinking about their approach to diet is how do I eliminate the stuff that I keep hearing that's so bad about? One of the things we're going to talk a lot about is sugar, certainly the processing of unhealthy fats, and certainly thinking about sodium levels, especially as you think about the implications around blood pressure. The other thing what we would talk about here is from a US perspective, over 40% of US consumers want their food and beverage to contribute to both that mental and physical health. So they're placing a high weight on this. And what are they looking for? Well, when they think about this journey and how that contributes, they think about their diet. And one of the areas of most interest and most increasing in popularity is Flexitarian. You guys may have heard about this before. Flexitarian really is a broader definition of people that are seeking to incorporate a mix of animal-based and plant-based foods into their diet. And it's really grown in popularity in Europe. You can see here on the top, the dark blue part of the graph represents the evolution of and penetration of current way of eating in Europe versus the middle shaded bar is the US versus the lighter bar is Asia Pacific. And you can see it's very much developed in Europe. In Asia Pacific, you see much more of an omnivore lifestyle. What I would tell you on the role of Flexitarian or the rise of Flexitarian is this is not a case of people are going to go all the way to Bright and go from 0 to 100 on becoming vegan or vegetarian. But what they are doing is they're looking for ways to incorporate plant-based nutrition into their diet. One of the ways they're looking to do that most is in dairy alternatives. So we can take 3 regions of the world. We can take Europe, the United States, and Asia as an example, and we can compare perceptions of health on different foods. In this case, we focus specifically on dairy compared to non-dairy milk alternatives. If you start off and look at Europe, for example, and you look at the green bars, which indicates a perception of healthy, non-dairy alternatives are actually seen as slightly less healthy than dairy milk. Or conversely, dairy milk still has a strong perception of healthiness. Part of that's because in Europe, having fermented dairy is a long-standing behavior and long-standing choice, and certainly seen as healthy. However, if you then move into the green bars and look at the United States and compare those same factors of dairy milk compared to non-dairy milk alternatives, you can see the perception of health actually flips, and non-dairy milk alternatives are seen as slightly healthier. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Then you move to Asia and you can see even a greater perception of health across both dairy as well as non-dairy alternatives in the region. So why would we start to see a little bit more of a change in the US in terms of non-dairy milk alternatives? Well, first of all, we're seeing a lot of marketing, a lot of activity around talking about non-dairy milk alternatives. Remember also there's an element to this around the social aspect of this in terms of like sustainability that does play a factor. But I think a couple factors that are really driving this. We know about 65 to 70% of the population has some type of a lactose malabsorption issue. It doesn't mean that they're entirely lactose intolerant, but it does mean that they could have some digestive distress if they're consuming lactose. And so if you can go and get something that's a substitute for that lactose and allows you to get good nutrition and allows you to continue to eat some of the foods that you have, that can be a win for a population. We also, as a country, consume an enormous amount of dairy, 99% penetration, and we eat it through all parts of the day part. So think about breakfast cereal with milk, think about yogurt, think about all the different coffees and teas and how many options you can go get at Starbucks with different options for both milk and non-dairy alternatives. So we're consuming milk and dairy in a wide range of our lives. So what this does is it offers a range of consumers to gradually substitute non-dairy milk alternatives in their life without feeling like they're sacrificing much. In most cases, the products that we're eating with dairy or non-dairy milk alternatives, they have different flavors in them. Cereals have flavors, coffees have flavors, yogurts have flavors. So if the cost isn't out of whack, if the flavor or sacrifice on taste isn't a major issue, and it allows consumers to get a little bit of plant-based nutrition into their diets, dairy is really a good foray or a good entryway to allow people to move into this flexitarian lifestyle. Now, what we'll also talk about here is comparing, for example, plant-based dairy alternative penetration versus plant-based meat alternatives. On the left-hand side, and this is from Barclay's enumerator, you can see that over the last 3 years, penetration of plant-based dairy alternatives has moved from, just below 9 to up above about 12%. So a good 3 points of increase. Conversely, if you look at plant-based meat alternatives, that's moved from 7-ish%, now moving closer down to 5. And so we're going to continue to see this. This is going to continue to be an industry or an area in flux. But I think the plant-based dairy alternative area is certainly gaining in strength and gaining in acceptance as a way to incorporate that flexitarian lifestyle. We also want to talk a little bit about some of the areas and some of the nutrients that are of most interest to consumers. This looks at a range of different nutrients and ingredients. The blue bars indicate a real high level of affinity. So people are looking for these ingredients in their lives. The orange bars represent a lack of interest, like a complete lack of either knowledge or interest or both in these particular ingredients. And you can see on the far left-hand side, it really is a story about protein and fiber. Protein is absolutely the macronutrient that consumers are looking for most in their lives. They're looking for it in all different delivery systems, whether it's a food, a beverage, a snack, baking items, all across the board. So they're looking to consume more protein. They're also looking at fiber. Now, fiber has gained steam over the years for a lot of different reasons. Certainly, it's linked to in helping people with GI health. It's also linked with people that are dealing with blood sugar issues, and perhaps maybe being insulin resistant. But during COVID, it really gained an additional level of affinity because people started to recognize that your gut health is directly related to your immune health. And if you're supporting one, you're giving a better chance of your body to support the other. The other area that I would call attention to that's growing and something that I would suggest that we continue to look at options to offer to the end consumer is the biotics. So these are pro, pre, and postbiotics. Postbiotics are still a little newer, so they don't have quite the same affinity, but pre and probiotics are gaining steam and gaining interest across the board. Again, as people think about gut health, they think about the relationship to their overall wellness, and they think about how that contributes to an overall sense of well-being. Now, you might think, for example, well, fiber, that's probably just focused on the boomers. Well, we can look at it by generation. So on the left-hand side, you've got the orange group, the orange boxes, which indicate the generations, and then the same list across the top. These are percentages that are interested in having these ingredients in their food or beverages. And you can see in the most part, the percentages across all the generations are somewhere in the high 20s to maybe 40%, except for in the middle. You can see probiotics and prebiotics, you start to see that 40 to 50% range. But then look what happens when you go over and look at fiber and protein. All generations are looking at more fiber and more protein in their diets. So it's not one generation, it is across all different groups. Now, when we think about the approach to wellness and we think about these ingredients, we also want to look at certain behaviors. Brian touched on the growth of snacking, and we see a lot of the same things going on. What's interesting is snacking continues to evolve. It's not just food. It actually is food and beverage are being seen as options for snacking. And when you look at it by generation, so in here we've got 4 generations, basically left to right, we go Gen Z, Gen Y, Xers, and Boomers. We can start to see that, for example, in functional benefit interest, the idea of energy is really being driven by Gen Z and Gen Y. That's not surprising. When you look at energy drinks and you look at who's consuming them and how frequently they're consuming them, Gen Z and then secondarily Gen Y are really driving the boat there. When you move into those second, third, and fourth areas, so when we look at calming and relaxation, look at how consistent that is across all populations, all generations. All generations are looking for ways for their consumption to help them manage their stress, manage their anxiety, give them that sense of positive feeling of mood. As you move to the third group and you talk about kind of the ability to manage what life is throwing at you, Gen Y is really driving the boat here. And you think about where Gen Y is in their life, they may have gotten married, they may be having children, they may be changing jobs, they may be taking care of adult parents that are going through some issues. So there might be a lot of things in their life that are really big things that are being thrown at their life that they're having to manage. And then finally, sleep. Remember I talked about earlier how Gen Z is thinking about healthy aging earlier than any other generation. One of the areas they're thinking about is how does sleep contribute to that healthy aging? And this is a great example of indicating that. So when we think about wellness, we think about behaviors and we think about what are people looking for even across generations. So I'm going to start to wrap this up here and then I'll turn it over to Brooke. A few key takeaways that I want to leave you with. Number one, remember, wellness is the journey. Wellness is multidimensional. It's physical, mental, emotional. And think about that energy well-being. We also know that mental and emotional well-being is at least as important as the physical, and in fact, slightly more important across all generations. Number two, healthy aging is seen as a sign of wellness. We know that all generations are thinking about healthy aging. 75% rank it as either extremely or very important. And we know that Gen Z already in their 20s is thinking about healthy aging. Across all groups, the things that are on top of mind as they think about healthy aging. It's physical activity, it's keeping an active mind, it's the positive mental aspect of life, so that energy balance, and then certainly just in energy to take on the day, energy for a boost when I need it, managing those. Thirdly is the role of nutrition. So we know that nutrition plays a big role on the wellness journey. Certainly there's an interest growing in Flexitarian lifestyle, incorporating some more plant-based nutrition into life. The other aspect that's important, especially in the US market, is the elimination of the bad stuff. It's getting rid of some of the ingredients that are seen as negative and detrimental. Those would be like sugar, unhealthy fats, processed foods, the additional sodiums, et cetera. And then we know from a macronutrient and nutrient perspective, protein and fiber are really the main areas of interest across all different types of forms and formats. So the other thing I would tell you too is that, remember we talked about the biotics. So we're seeing more and more of an interest in pre, pro, and postbiotic usage across all generations. So this is part of that nutritional aspect of the wellness journey. And finally, if I had to have you focus on, let's say, 5 key benefit areas within as you're thinking about new products. Number one, think about immunity and immunity plus. So immunity becomes kind of a table stakes, and now people are looking for immunity plus other benefits. And those start to become a bit of a bifurcation based on what's interesting or what's needed by each group. Number two is gut health. We talked about fiber, we talked about the biotic families, talked about the growth in that area. Stress and mood management is absolutely important across all generations and becoming more and more of a focus. Number four is cognitive and brain performance, especially as the boomers, a little bit on the Xers, and certainly the boomers think about that keeping sharp as they age. And then finally, energy. And when you think about the ingredients, some key things to keep in mind. Botanicals, nootropics, antioxidants are all areas of focus, all areas that are growing of interest. Now, you have to be careful that in some cases, people don't know exactly what they do. So there can be some education that comes along with that. But as people are looking for functional benefits in their food and beverage, these become more important. Secondarily, it's about removing things like sugar in all forms. Get rid of the sugar, low sugar, no sugar added. And if you are going to use sugar, definitely be thinking about some of the more healthy perception ones like monk fruit and stevia leaf. And then thirdly, the natural side of ingredients. Keep an eye on the number of ingredients. Think about more clean label, fewer ingredients, more clarity on what those ingredients are and what role they play. And as an example, think about flax. So flax is a great ingredient. It has a strong profile in fiber, strong profile in omega-3s, strong profile in helping on protein. And obviously, it supports a plant-based nutrition approach. And it's a great option if you want to take out some of the gums that are in a particular food item that you have. You can bring in flax as a great option. more clean label, certainly well received and well perceived, and has some nice nutritional benefits. It's an area that we're very well developed in. And finally, I'm going to leave you with just a little bit of eye candy here in terms of some new product examples from the last year and a half. These are some items that have been launched. I won't read all these into you, but you can see how many of these are functional beverage. Whey protein infused electrolyte water from Powerlift. I've used this product a lot. It's very, very good. 10 grams of whey protein isolate. You've got a probiotic in yogurt-based dairy drink here. Vitamin water, zero sugar with electrolytes and antioxidants. And even this one down here in the middle, bottom middle, this is actually from Scandinavia that has whey protein isolate plus omega-3s plus some additional electrolytes. So a lot of this multi-functioning benefit that's coming to life across food and beverage. I hope you found this helpful. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to Brooke to wrap up with a few things about Glanbia Nutritionals. So Brooke, take it away.
Thanks, James. At Glanbia Nutritionals, wellness is at the top of mind with everything we do. Our purpose is to deliver better nutrition for every step of life's journey, and that starts with each ingredient that we offer. We have a team with extensive ingredient knowledge and product formulation expertise. Paired with a broad portfolio of functional solutions, we have what it takes to help our customers meet the needs of consumers today. When we approached this world of holistic wellness, we broke it up into two parts: wellness for the body and wellness for the mind. We then curated our most relevant product solutions and broke them down into two sections: functional snacking solutions and then bioactive and premix solutions. Here you can see our functional snacking solutions with a special focus on a few key ingredients that are highlighted. We have our Bar Harvest pea proteins, which are functional pea proteins that allow for high levels of protein fortification without compromising on taste or texture. We have our crunchy semi-finished extruded pieces that come in crisp, bites, loops, and curls. These are a revolutionary new way to achieve protein fortification in extruded snacks and cereals. Bev Flax, Snack Flax, and Cuisine Flax. James touched on the benefits of flax. We're big flax fans over here, and we have great solutions in that category. Then we have our protein probiotic cheese, which is a clean label, protein-packed, zero sugar, natural cheese, perfect for snacking occasions. Moving to our bioactive and premix solution spotlight, our all-in premix blends are pre-formulated with active ingredients and ready to use as they are, or can be further customized for product formulations, targeting those consumer need states that were mentioned in the presentation, help speed up the formulation process and provide relevant market solutions. We have a wide variety of targeted blends like immunity, stress, sleep, and of course, essential energy. Next, we have our NutriShield micro encapsulations, which are part of our TechVantage functionally optimized nutrient portfolio. For this campaign, we wanted to highlight our microencapsulated ashwagandha, which provides all the benefits of ashwagandha without any of the unpleasant flavors or off notes. And then we have our PepForm tryptophan, which can help promote sleep. And we also offer Watson edible films and flavors by Foodarom as the perfect complement to any product formula. We are running out of time, so I want to quickly open the floor for a few questions. And if you have any other questions that don't get addressed here, feel free to reach out directly to the presenters. You will have access to these slides. It should come in an automatic email post-webinar. If for some reason you don't receive that, please jot down this contact information and feel free to reach out to us today. I do see one question already in the box. It says, what is your opinion when it comes to packaging overwhelming the consumer with claims, for example, gluten-free, non-GMO, plant-based, etc.? So I might have James take this one. They say we have received such varying feedback regarding the consumer being intimidated by too many claims and certain logos.
Yeah, I think that it certainly is something that we're watching as well. I think that what's really important is to first make sure that the product that you're talking about has a clear overall benefit. So what is it really trying to give them overall? Is it focused on, helping them on their athletic and sports performance needs? Is it helping them try and improve their energy? Is it helping them try and improve their sleep health? Is it trying to help them from a weight management or from maybe, a metabolic standpoint? And then I would really focus on the power of three. So give them three things that really focuses the message, the support, if you will. So think about a benefit, reason to believe structure. Those reasons to believe really focus on three things that are the key drivers. Because you're right, there is a real confusion of all these different ingredients around what they do. And then if a consumer feels like they have to go look up something because they're not sure what it is or they haven't heard it before, that's where it starts to get to a point where they're going to walk away. They're not going to make that purchase. And that gets back to what I was talking about before about protein and fiber, and then those litany of other ingredients. As you move further from left to right, you see a much less of an interest in some of those ingredients, not because they're not worthwhile, not because they're not good, but because people don't understand what they do, and there's a lack of understanding. And so that just causes more of that confusion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
James.
if I could just add.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, if I could just add, like I think that for the food and beverage manufacturers, you have to know your audience. So the idea is not to just to put a bunch of different labels on the package. And I'll bring two different examples, right? So one is Kevin's, and I bring that up because that's a recent example. Like they really focus on kind of the natural, right? And then they have the paleo, they have the keto. So they're really identifying labels that resonate with the current audience of today, right? In contrast, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a product called Driftwell, which is a beverage manufacturer, and their whole main claim was on the nootropic, sleep aid. That product just absolutely bombed. Because it was such, it didn't really address the broad spectrum of the American consumer out there, and so I think that the strategy is to really identify a target consumer, and in addition, like have the type of claim that addresses most of the awareness of the American consumer, and then that plus category. There's something additional related to that main category. So whether that's antibiotics, whether that's additional protein, whether that seems to be the strategy that works now. But yeah, it's a great question, because I think a lot of manufacturers really struggle with making sure that the messaging and the label is targeted to their specific audience.
Thanks, Brian. We have another question asking if our ingredients are GRAS approved. Majority are, but GRAS status does vary by ingredients. So if you have a question on a specific one, please feel free to reach out to us and we can get you the appropriate product information. And then we have, are your products porcine free, as it's a great concern for Muslim communities? That is something that we will have to look into. So if you want to send us a quick email with any product or ingredient that you're specifically interested in, we can address that more ingredient by an ingredient basis. Any last minute questions before we wrap up here? I want to make sure we hit any that we can in the next few minutes. Okay, I think we will wrap up. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time and engagement with this webinar. Like I mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. Glanbia is here to help you formulate your next wellness product, and the Food Institute is here to help with any trend, insight, and information you might need in that category. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.